Live from the Burke Lakefront Airport on the edge of Lake Erie, the IndyCars are poised for round 8 of the PPG IndyCar World Series. The fight for the championship rages on. The fans wait, the pulse quickens, and the engines are ready for life. It's a hot day here in Cleveland. The fans are all filling the grandstands, looking forward to a run for the IndyCars. And midsummer, chase for the championship and the PPG Cup. And now it's time for the start of the engines.
Raul Boesel, 74 points.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Back close.
So the clock going out, apparently for gentlemen, start.
Each turbocharged engine, 161 cubic inches, boosted to over 750 horsepower, ready to go. A quick glance to each readout to assure driver and crew all is ready. Then a check of voice transmissions on the radio and telemetry data. They wait for the final temperatures and pressures to read normal, and then the field will pull away. Nigel Mansell, the reigning World Formula One champion, as he sits and waits. The front row is set. Emerson Fittipaldi in his car. Paul Tracy is there. And we are set to go racing in Cleveland. Drivers joined the battle. 1,600 miles have gone by, but much of the fight has centered on two men. Nigel Mansell is the reigning Formula One champion. His incredible skills have brought him to the top of the points. For Nigel, courage is common. Twice Emerson Fittipaldi wore the Formula One crown and added an Indy 500 and PPG Cup. His 46-year-old eyes sparkle with youth and racing savvy. The two first met in IndyCars on the front row in Australia. At first, Emo's experience took control. But then it was Nigel's courage. He drove deeper and came home with the win. The first IndyCar driver ever to drive pole to checker in his first race. In practice at Phoenix, Nigel slammed the wall. In the race, Fittipaldi suffered the same fate. At the Indy 500, the two were at each other once again. Nigel in front on a restart fell victim to his inexperience and Emo's savvy. Emo's second checkered flag at the Brickyard made it 1-1 in his battle with Mansell. Age and experience were helping Fittipaldi catch Nigel in the points fight. On the Milwaukee Mile, Mansell led a wonderfully consistent Raul Boesel to the flag. It was Mansell's first oval win and number 2 for the season. On Belle Isle in Detroit, the two antagonists again shared the front row. Emerson was offline and into the tire barrier. Nigel's in was a little harder as he caught the wall. In Portland, the two great champions took the fight further. Under pressure from Emo, Nigel went off course. The way was now clear for Fittipaldi to pull even with Mansell at 2 wins each. But it was Nigel Mansell that was leading the points. Today's fight is the Burke Airport in Cleveland, a wide, bumpy surface that can give even the best fault security that is rewarded with screaming tires. A wide track can mean big mistakes. Last year, Michael Andretti battled Fittipaldi here and lost. How will Michael's replacement, Nigel Mansell, fare against the 3-time winner here? Or against Bobby Rahal, who hasn't finished worse than 4th in the last 6 races in Cleveland? Or Danny Sullivan, a 3-time winner? Or the consistent Raul Boesel, second in the points, on the verge of his first win? Cleveland is an enigma. It requires the zest of youth and the wisdom of age to succeed. As the heat settles over the east, it only adds to the challenges for the IndyCar teams as they face the Cleveland Grand Prix presented by Goodyear. Hi, I'm Paul Page, and this course on an airport at nearly 2.4 miles long means that the teams can make no mistakes when they calculate the pit stops on this rough, bumpy surface on a hot day. Let's take a look at how the points battle shapes up here with Nigel Mansell at the top, despite the fact that he did not race at Phoenix. very consistent in second place is Raul Boesel, who only once has finished out of the top 10. In third is Emerson Fittipaldi, who has had an up-and-down season, but on this track last year, he drove to win the fastest road race in IndyCar history at 133 miles an hour. But Sam Posey, that points fight is really heating up.
Well, it is. After Mansell won Milwaukee 3 races ago, he appeared poised to run away with the championship. Now, that has not happened, although he still leads it by a few points. Both Boesel and Fittipaldi have him in their sights. Boesel, as you said, the most consistent finisher, is planning to try to wear him down. And Fittipaldi, well, he outran him last week in Portland, and may very well have the faster car. I don't think Nigel's on the defensive yet, Paul, but he may very well be by the end of today.
Of course, the challenge common to all, Bobby Unser, is one tough racetrack.
Well, Paul, this is the fastest road course on the IndyCar circuit, but it certainly isn't the easiest. There are several important things to consider. Number one, the track is built on an airport that has cement runways connected by asphalt taxiways. Now, as you watch, you'll see how extremely bumpy it is where they meet. This causes the track to be very hard on the transmission. Secondly, it's hard on the drivers too. The bumps cause the driver to constantly fight the steering wheel a whole lot more than usual, and their heads are always bobbing up and down, which makes it real difficult to focus, and especially in the traffic. Last but not least, it's over 90 degrees. This will affect the drivers, the cars, and the racetrack.
So part of the challenge here today, 29 Indy cars are started and moving behind Johnny Rutherford in the pace car. Let's look at the starting field. The pole sitter is Paul Tracy, who set a new track record in earning his second career pole position and Chevy's first pole this year. Alongside Nigel Mansell, the PPG points leader, with 2 wins and 4 poles this season. In row 2, it's Emerson Fittipaldi, a 3-time winner of this race, and Stefan Johansson seeking his first IndyCar win. In the third row, Scott Goodyear, looking for his first win of the season, and Danny Sullivan, with 3 wins and 2 poles at this track. In row 4, Al Unser Jr., the winner of this event in 1985. And Mark Smith, a rookie driver who is showing well with a year-old Penske and a Chevy V engine. Inside row 5 is Teo Fabi, the former IndyCar Rookie of the Year, and Bobby Rahal, who won his first ever IndyCar race at this track in 1982. In the 6th row, it's Mario Andretti, the only driver ever to win an IndyCar race in 4 different decades. And Raul Boesel, a runner-up 3 times this year. In row 7, Brian Till, in his best start ever. And Willie T. Ribbs, who has scored points in 2 races this season. In row 8, it's Arie Luyendyk, the runner-up at Indy, and Scott Brayton. In row 9, Olivier Griard and Roberto Guerrero. The 10th row, Christian Danner and Robbie Gordon. In row 11, Hiro Matsushita and Kevin Kogan. The 12th row, Buddy Lazier and Lynn St. James. In row 13, it's Ross Bentley and Robbie Buell. The 14th row, Brian Bonner and Jeff Wood. And alone in the 15th row is Marco Greco. So they line up on the pace lap now and making the turn back from the far east loop of this track along the grandstands, a little chicane, and then the start-finish straight away. Paul Tracy sits on the pole, Nigel Mansell to the outside. The IndyCar drivers and officials are still discussing the starts of these races. The officials now say if you are misaligned on the start in the back of the field, you can in fact be black flagged for a bad start. Paul Tracy brings them off, heading toward the green flag. He accelerates, leads the field across the line as the green flag comes out, and they spread wide going into the first turn. A nice wide runway surface, and look at Mansell as he comes down the inside. 2 cars in trouble. 3, 4 cars on the start of the race. 3 cars together, maybe 4. 3 of them up here stop. Yellow flag flies in that area as Nigel Mansell picks up the lead, and the rest of the field strings out behind. We'll see if they go a full course yellow. It will depend on how fast they get Roberto Guerrero, and Raul Boesel is involved in that as well. And it looked like the other car might have been Willie T. Ribbs. At the front of the field, they battle. Paul Tracy chasing Nigel Mansell, looking for room to race on the inside. Emergency vehicles rolling to that scene in the first turn, but they continue to race under the green flag on the rest of the circuit. It's certainly plenty wide there. They should be able to race past them. Mansell coming down to complete the first lap, and we go to yellow around the course. So the pace car will come out. Nigel Mansell will lead the first lap, followed by Paul Tracy and Emerson Fittipaldi. As a result of the cars in contact in turn number 1 here. They'll come past that right away. We can look at it now from the blimp. Here's the field coming down. Mansell makes his sweep to the inside, but look toward the back of the field, Bobby.
Yes, you can see they're all diving towards the bottom. Now look at here how they have to go down like a funnel. And right in there, they all started collecting because you can see they were 4 and 5 wide, and they had to get down to 2 lanes wide in the corner, and it just wouldn't fit, Paul.
It looked like the other car that spun there but continued on might have been Bobby Rahal, the inaugural winner of this event. But it looked like he got it back under control, that I think he was involved in contact. We'll have to check that in the pits.
This is the easiest place to pass on the course going into that turn right off the start-finish line. And the trick to it is to go to the inside. So if a guy's going really fast, he's on the outside, he makes a normal apex into the turn, a guy can dive underneath him. In this particular case, they had about 10 guys trying to do the same thing.
All right, we have the time now. Let's go down pit side and begin some updates there with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, first of all, let me show you behind me. They've brought out the front nose cone and a new wing system for Al Unser Jr. He was second quickest in early morning practice today. This could be a bad break for him, although they are going to be able to do it under full course yellow. Now, to update you on the continuing discussions about starts here within IndyCar racing. 27 minutes of the drivers' meeting was devoted to it, and there is some serious discussion about changing the rules, but not for this race. There is a cone some 300 yards before the start-finish line, and at this point, the start that we saw today, it was up to the front row not to accelerate until they hit that cone. Let's check in with some more unfolding information on pit road with my colleague Gary Gerould.
Jack, couple of key concerns. It's already been mentioned, the heat and the roughness or the bumps on the circuit. But 2 key drivers, Nigel Mansell and Stefan Johansson, have got to contend with another big factor. Both of them are driving with sprained right wrists, suffered in fluke accidents yesterday. Mansell, going to a post-qualifying news conference, stumbled on the stairs, fell, and he hurt the right wrist. X-rays disclosed no fracture. There was discomfort, however. He was fast in this morning's session, but he's got to run 200 miles, not just a handful of laps in the warm-up. Johansson in the pits yesterday. Andretti came in, clipped the nose of Johansson's car. The wheel whipped in the cockpit with his hand on it. It sprained his right wrist. So he also has the right wrist heavily taped. They've got a lot of shifting to do over 200 miles. It could be a very tough day for both of those men, Paul.
In fact, by Nigel Mansell's calculations, 1,700 shifts between now and the end of the race. By the way, you saw Bobby Rahal and Roberto Guerrero walking away from the track. Here is Bobby Rahal's on-board view of this situation on the start.
They say it was obvious, Paul, that he got touched from behind. Cars were touching everybody. There really wasn't much they could do because they were all trying to get down and to find a place. Here's another angle to look at here now.
The irony is that this is one of the widest tracks you'll ever see in racing. Look at them. They're all over the place like an LA freeway. You'd think there'd be enough room, and there wasn't.
But, Sam, we thought that they were 5 wide. They were probably 7 or 8 wide there for a while.
And there are several other cars unaccounted for. You got well, there's Rahal and Roberto Guerrero as they walk back. You got a glimpse, though, of Mark Smith in that onboard view from Bobby Rahal's car. He certainly was tapped by Rahal during that spin. So we are under a full course yellow that came out on the very first lap here at Cleveland. The field at Cleveland still lined up behind the PPG pace car. Only 2 drivers actually reported out of that confrontation in the very first turn on the start of the race, Bobby Rahal and Roberto Guerrero. But let's go back and look at that start once again. And this time perhaps we can focus on those people who succeeded in getting through well at the front of the field. Paul Tracy sweeps across in front of Nigel Mansell. Nigel ducks over to the inside alongside Tracy. They come through the corner side by side. The accident occurs. The racing goes toward the Lakeside Straight. And Paul Tracy is eclipsed by Nigel Mansell as they move to that position. Gary?
Paul, here's Bobby Rahal, who's just come back to talk with the crew. Do you have any idea what happened? You obviously got hit from the backside.
More than once. I had a good start, and as I turned into the first turn, somebody hit me from behind my right rear, and that sort of got me sideways, but I was able to correct the slide and get back in the throttle and drive it around. Then somebody really nailed me, and that spun me right in front of, and then Guerrero just clobbered me. So I don't know who. I think it might have been even 2 different guys for all I know.
This is always a concern because there is so much room and so many different lines you can take in the first turn on the start here.
Yeah, there's no question of that. You just kind of wonder, it's first lap.
And I know it's disappointing because you've been getting those strong top 5 finishes with a new chassis, and things were really starting to come together for this team.
This doesn't do our championship hopes any good, but but you never know. There's a lot of racing left, so it's just unfortunate. I think we had a good car today, and I'm just sad for everybody. Came here from Miller, and for our crew, they worked hard. It's just, you know, you like to go a little bit further than the first corner.
We'll see you next week with better fortune in Toronto, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matter of fact, it can be devastating to a man who struggled in the early part of the year, seemed to have turned his course of events around. They now begin to pick up the pace just a bit.
And remember, Ray Hall comes from here, and there was an enormous ovation when he stepped up when they introduced the driver. So a number of people in the stands very disappointed.
Well, very much considered a hometown driver. He lives in a suburb of Columbus, about 2 miles down the freeway from here. Now with Nigel Mansell pulling them very slowly off of the East Loop and getting the field aligned single file to come back to green.
Well, one of the things we want to wait and see is Wally Dallenbach going to put a penalty. The start was not lined up as he did, or as he made the ruling on Detroit, Paul. So there's still, Wally still may have a black flag for somebody up at the start.
The interesting thing was Mansell's move down the inside. He practiced that twice yesterday, long before he knew he was going to be on the front row, and I think that's why he was able to pull that pass off. Here he goes.
Now Mansell picks up the pace. The chicane to the start-finish straight ahead. As the yellow flags drop, the green flag comes out, and we go to racing in the Cleveland Grand Prix, presented by Goodyear, as Nigel Mansell is in front. Tracy is second. Fittipaldi third. Here comes Stefan Johansson, followed by Danny Sullivan.
Johansson having a season that is both good in the sense he's making a tremendously favorable impression, and bad in the sense he can't finish in the top 10.
Mansell has led 6 of 8 races this year, failed to lead at Detroit, and of course he didn't race at Phoenix, but he begins to pull away here.
This is one of those tracks, Paul, where fuel mileage is not as much a factor as it normally is. And the reason for that is that they don't run in low gears. It's a very fast racetrack, and there's very little time spent in first and second gears at this track. So the mileage is a lot better because they cover more miles with less RPM.
Mansell is already driving a little more cautiously than he did.
Hiro Matsushita, left rear, apparently damaged. It shows you how rough this track is, how careful you must be. He'll try and limp that car back to the pits.
Most often a tire like that is caused by a stone cutting it. You know, from something on the runways. It's the track of runways and taxiways. So tire was cut, and then it just tears up getting it back.
Bobby, at Portland last week, Nigel led, of course, early in the going, but he was driving almost, it seemed, way over even his head. Here he's a little more stable. Of course, he's got Paul Tracy right behind him. Mansell and his team know that their car may not be the fastest right now. They tested for 2 days at Mid-Ohio during this week. Whether they've made improvements or not, who can be sure?
Well, to have Paul Tracy behind him, Stan, was going to give him a headache pretty soon. If Paul Tracy's going to push him to the end of the world if he has to.
True, and yet Tracy at this point is not a factor in the championship. That is something Mansell will be thinking of as the day unfolds.
Third place, Emerson Fittipaldi. The battle develops here as Stefan Johansson, in an almost identical Penske chassis, is now giving pursuit. This is the battle on the course. While Tracy is worrying Nigel Mansell, he's not really in a position to pass him just yet. Danny Sullivan closing down behind Johansson as well, and then Teo Fabi.
Now remember, as we watch Emerson Fittipaldi, how canny this man is. Bobby spoke of the heat. It's extremely hot out there. It's a long race. Emerson has won it 3 times. He may be thinking about how he has to pace himself. Neither of the men ahead of him have ever finished this race strongly.
Sam, also, the guy that's in the best shape here, and of course having a good car too, is the guy that's going to do the best. Nobody is in better shape than Emerson Fittipaldi.
Indications now are that they will display the black flag to Ari Luyendyk for a pit speed violation, apparently run under those yellows. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Now Paul Tracy is able to pursue Nigel Mansell a little closer, moving to a couple of the passing areas. A lot of good passing occurs right on this next corner.
Interestingly, Mansell has taken the lead more often than anyone in the series this year. Tracy has led the most laps. So the 2 hottest guys are really at the front right here. Tracy taking a look, showing Mansell, hey, I'm back here.
They come through the chicane onto the pit straight, the start-finish straight once again. That wide turn lies ahead of them. An incredibly fast road course. Here's Paul Tracy again, looks to the inside, lets Mansell know that he's there.
You know, drafting, we're probably wondering if this track is so fast, does drafting work? And it really does work here. Right now, they're going on what we call the long back straightaway, and you definitely, about halfway down, pick up a fairly good draft.
Remember Tracy's reputation as a man who is fast but also crashes. He must have in his mind right now, he wants to get by Mansell, of course, but he must do so cleanly. Here comes Luyendyk in response to that black flag.
Stop and go penalty. The officials will hold him just a few seconds, and then he goes back to the fight.
Boy, they're holding it. Whoa.
Taking this penalty serious, aren't they?
It just doesn't seem to be the same at every race we go to. That one was a long hold. In essence, put him a long ways down.
Except, of course, for Ari's brilliant second place at Indy, he has not had much of a season.
Gary Gerould.
Paul, to amplify why they hold them so long, remember when you enter pit road, it's a straight shot. You don't have that chicane that gets you back on the circuit. So you could have an advantage if you sped into the pits and sped out. That's why they hold them on pit road, to make certain there's no advantage gained whatsoever.
Whoa, as Paul Tracy gets well off the course. Point well taken. If you go into the pits, you're actually missing the chicane 2 turns on the course.
Yes, Paul, and we were watching Tracy as he slid off the track just a little bit. Paul was really smart on that. He eased off the throttle. He raised a lot of dust. He didn't even spin the tires. Came back on, lost a little space to Mansell, but it didn't make a bit of difference to him. Showed he's a little bit smarter for a change.
One big issue, of course, this year has been the starts. The other one has been blocking. And as you saw Tracy close in behind Mansell, and I think we're going to see it again in a lap or so, the question becomes, is Mansell doing any blocking? So far, none at all. But with pressure from Tracy, let's see what Mansell does.
Nothing changes at the top of the order. The field running single file now. Many of the drivers thinking, no doubt, that with the heat here today and the traditional roughness of this track, it is better to try and run single file and save the race car for the end of the race. Led by Nigel Mansell, you take the look back, followed by Paul Tracy, Emerson Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, Danny Sullivan, then Teo Fabi. 10 laps are complete of the 85-lap, 201-mile distance. Back at the Burke Lakefront Airport in Cleveland, you ride with 15th place now, Al Unser Jr., though remember, with 2 pit stops, he fell back to the entire last position in the field when they came back to green after the early caution. He's now been carving his way up through the field, and look at the bumps as he goes through, especially in this section. Look how rough it is there, bottoming the shocks out, throwing him around in the car. Somebody with either an engine let go or just, that looked like white smoke, like it might have been a motor problem from someone ahead, Bobby.
I think that was just somebody getting off into the dirt a little bit there, Paul. It probably Boycell right in front of him there.
Danny Sullivan, Teo Fabi as they battle.
Sullivan prepared himself, you see him in the blue car on the left of the screen here, for the heat by playing 2 sets of tennis at 1 p.m. on Friday, the exact time the race was due to start on Sunday. Today, he practiced some tennis.
Counting Johansson just ahead, a 3-way battle for fourth. Johansson, Danny Sullivan, and Teo Fabi. On a hot day like this, one would presume that someone in the condition of a Danny Sullivan would fare well.
Well, yesterday he stood outside of his motorhome signing autographs for more than an hour. He's the only driver to come out of the air-conditioned comfort and sign autographs for the fans.
Watch as you watch Sam and Paul. Watch you watch Danny Sullivan, Teo Fabi right behind him at the different groove that they take. Look at the difference right there going into that turn. Teo Fabi and Danny Sullivan, 2 different concepts. Now, there isn't a track in the United States that has as much room as this track does. So they can just let their imaginations go to the end of the world. They can try any line that they like. And a lot of different ones seem to work.
And we saw a lot of different lines going into turn 1 at the beginning of the race.
Well, take a look here as we watch back at the front of the field. The Penske cars battle. 3 different lines going into the corner. And now Paul Tracy comes up to challenge with Nigel Mansell. He gets alongside him on the lakeside straight. Now the power pours on from that Chevrolet engine, and he gets past. But here comes Mansell back with a challenge as they come into the chicane. Both of the cars bouncing over the bumps there. Mansell hot in pursuit as they head out toward the east end.
Well, Tracy did a good job on that because he got underneath him and blocked him. He knew there was a right-hand turn coming up. He blocked Mansell where Mansell was helpless for a little while. So he had to give away and go to second place.
Okay, you used the word block. Legal block or one that they may question?
No, that was a good pass. That was a good, honest pass. And I know everybody's getting a little confused because Cart can't seem to make up their minds what blocky or what is blocky, what isn't, Paul. But that was a good, honest pass, and I didn't mean it to sound like it was anything.
Well, let me take a shot at the definition. You tell me if I'm right. I'm the leader here. I'm Paul Tracy. I can go into the corner any line that I want. You come up behind me, you're Nigel Mansell, and you move way to the outside. If I sweep to the outside, then after establishing the line, that's the block. It's the second move, right?
Yes, that's blocking. What it means is if you're driving by your rearview mirrors and purposely trying to zigzag and stop the car from passing you when you knowingly know that he's on a line going by you and you're on a different line, that is blocking.
The question here is the Penske car faster right now at this point in the season than Mansell's Lola? And it looks as if with the ease that Tracy is pulling away, the answer may be yes.
Well, obviously, Sam, that the Penske cars have been faster all weekend. Tracy, at the early part of the race, we're pretty certain he was just laying back behind Nigel because he had the start when they came down. Nigel Mansell wouldn't get on the gas for some reason. Paul went ahead into the first turn. He slowed down a little bit.
That's the pass. Get an idea of how Tracy maneuvered for this one.
So he just blocked. He went by Nigel and stopped Nigel from turning into the turn right there.
It was
As
a beauty.
I was saying before, Paul slowed down a little bit at the start, Sam. He let Nigel go on back by, not because he wanted to, but because he's worried about Wally Dallenbach throwing a black flag as he did in Detroit. So therefore, Mansell got the lead. But it's obvious Tracy's the fastest right now.
Stefan Johansson is closing in here on Fittipaldi. That's Ari Luyendyk in the middle, but remember he had that penalty. And Johansson has managed to close up on Fittipaldi, bringing that entire battle that involves Danny Sullivan and to some degree Teo Fabi forward.
Yes, exactly. And of course, it warms up the championship situation as we ride with Sullivan. We know that this pressure is forcing Fittipaldi closer and closer to his championship rival, Mansell. And Mansell seems to be slowing.
Out of the race already. We mentioned that he was involved in that situation at the start. Willie T. Ribbs. As they pull his car back to the transporter, it's out of the race and will load early. Back riding with Danny Sullivan, right in the midst of that fight. Look at him spread out once again. Luyendyk, of course, though he is not a factor, really has no reason to let up, as he wants to get through this field as best he can.
One of the reasons, Paul, that the cars, when you see them going down the straightaways, get so many different lines where they're not going to be passed, is because here it's very hard to see. It's a flat racetrack because, again, it's on an airport. So they can get offline from the other cars. They can see a lot further ahead and see what's really going on in the track.
Well, you can get offline, but getting off the track can be very dangerous. The leader, Paul Tracy, has had some problems just like that. Look, just a couple laps ago. But again, very gently gets the car back on, a time when, as you mentioned, Bobby, you do have to be incredibly gentle.
Well, just look how gentle he was right there. If he would have stayed on the gas, that car would have spun probably 2 times in a complete circle. But as soon as he saw he was going off, he just came out of the gas. The turbocharger cuts off. He probably doesn't have over 100, maybe 125 horsepower. He just motors back on the track and then nails it again. So the kid is acting a whole lot smarter.
Now the leaders sort their way through traffic, though for the most part traffic getting out of the way, staying over so they both can come through. Jack Arute, you have an update on the third place Fittipaldi?
That's right, Paul. Sam Posey, you alluded to the fact that Paul Tracy is not in the points hunt while his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi is. What we are witnessing right now is a little bit of strategy. Fittipaldi is determined, along with his crew, that he would like to lay back and watch this battle up front between his teammate and Nigel Mansell, feeling that if they duke it out near the end of the race, they may be used up, almost punch drunk the way a fighter would be, and then he can strike. Fittipaldi is thinking about points. Tracy is thinking about winning.
Jack, Fittipaldi saved the driver, saved the car.
Right. Well, Jack, that's a great point because the way Mansell is driving, he is really using himself up. I mean, he is going as hard now. He was calm in the early going, but with Tracy ahead of him, he's really pushing that car again.
And Sam, don't forget, every driver here knows that he had the problem with his wrist. So they're looking at Nigel Mansell, hoping that they can use that wrist up as well.
Well, Jack, I just think that, or I want to mention, I don't know that his wrist is as bad as it might seem. Maybe he's a little bit actor on that. Mansell is in extremely good shape, but so is this young lad right here in the number 12 car, Paul Tracy. Both of these guys are in good shape. They'll be very tired at the end of the race because it's very hot today, a lot of humidity. They'll wear each other out.
Quick spin off and on for Brian Bonner, and looks like he may have killed the engine. He was not a factor in the battle. The factor is here at the front of the field as Mansell continues to chase down Paul Tracy. Mansell, the early leader of the run. Now Tracy beginning to pull away just a bit, and you can see that this battle, as they've run through traffic, has separated considerably. from the third-place car. And that battle that is being led by Emerson Fittipaldi between Fittipaldi, Johansson, Danny Sullivan, Teo Fabi. Fire at the back of Bonner's car. He's calling for a little help there, though he's safely out of the car. Still, with the cost of even something as simple as a cowling on one of these cars, you don't want any problems at all.
Those cowlings are probably $20,000, $25,000.
Exactly.
Also, he doesn't want to stand there and let it burn up. He wants somebody to put it out.
So at the front, static for the moment, clear traffic ahead for Paul Tracy, a man who has been watched so very carefully by the fans and certainly by his owner, Roger Penske, this year, scoring his first victory at Long Beach and his second pole of his career for this race. But someone who has to be very careful. He can't afford many more mistakes.
Watch these cars, both of these cars, Paul Tracy right there, then Mansell right there. And notice how much smoother Tracy's car is going through there than Mansell's. Watch how much each one of them bounce. That'll give you an idea how they're handling.
So Paul Tracy leads this field. 85 laps, the scheduled distance. 20 are now complete as they get Brian Bonner's car off the course. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC station. Back in Cleveland, looking down on Paul Tracy from overhead. The Goodyear Blimp Spirit from Akron, Ohio, one of America's most enduring images. The Goodyear Blimp looking down on the Cleveland Grand Prix, presented by Goodyear. Paul Tracy leads it. Nigel Mansell is about 3 seconds behind. Then Emerson Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, Danny Sullivan in 5th. In 6th is Teo Fabi, then Mario Andretti. Brian Till is 8th, Robbie Gordon is 9th, and Raul Boesel is 10th. Because this is an airport, normally the IndyCar system has a very sophisticated computer system that helps score the cars, and they have transmitters on board the cars that send a signal to lines embedded in the pavement as we join a ride with 15th place Scott Goodyear. Well, that doesn't work here because they won't let you cut into an airport runway to install that system. So it's back to the old computer-assisted manual system here. We ride with Scott Goodyear. Scott Brayton is just ahead of him. We'll just sit and watch this battle for a bit. Looking again down from overhead. Now back. There is Brayton sitting just ahead of Scott Goodyear. And we'll just ride with him here.
Scott Goodyear's engine there, and I think everybody can hear it. You can hear as he goes through the bumps how he keeps just an even throttle. He doesn't back all the way out, and he doesn't get in it really hard. In fact, he doesn't even have the turbocharger running right then. And you can watch if we stay with him a little bit longer there, that as he goes through the bumps, it's really smooth because he can just barely stay in that power.
Danny Sullivan, he runs in 5th place. Clear field ahead with Danny for the moment. You got a glimpse of Paul Tracy. He, of course, still runs in the front of this field. At the moment, unchallenged by Mansell. Mansell begins to nibble away just a little bit, and then they run into traffic, and it'll fall back on Mansell. So he's having trouble handling up some of the slower cars on this circuit.
Sullivan qualified 6th, by far his best qualification of the year. He's much invigorated by his victory in Detroit.
Back to the front of the field. Here is Paul Tracy. Chevy-powered Penske chassis. Interesting contrast always in power between the Chevrolet engine and the Ford engine. Once again, running first and second. Ford power, the Ford Cosworth engine in Nigel Mansell's car. But you see, when Paul looks at his mirrors now, he doesn't have red number 5 filling them up.
Mansell has dropped back almost 4 seconds, 3.8 seconds as they cross the line on the last lap. So Tracy is pulling away.
Boy, just watch as he goes through the turns. The car just quivers sometimes. Now, I think the Penske is probably working the best it has in the last 3 or 4 years. So just watch it in the turns.
The 2 black cars, Brian Till, and there is Robbie Gordon. They are running right now in a battle for 8th place. Till got away from Robbie just for a second there, and already Robbie is closing back in.
Till, you see him here in the center of the screen, told me a wonderful thing this morning. I said, what's it like over the bumps? He said, it's like being in one of those paint mixers. Look at him bounce around in there.
Robbie Gordon, just look how much smoother he was through there than Brian Till. Now, in qualifications and practice, Gordon had a problem. His wastegate, which controls the turbocharger, was stuck open, so he didn't have any throttle response. That was the reason why his qualification was so bad.
I think it's a confirmed fact that Robbie Gordon is one of the stars of the future. Much less has been heard about Brian Till, who I think may be too. A guy like Ray Hall, who can carry a briefcase and know what's going on inside of it, really present himself well in a board meeting, but then he sort of puts all that away when he attacks a racetrack. Terrific driver, and another local Ohio man.
So these two cars battle. The front of the field remains the same, no changes in position. Paul Tracy leading Nigel Mansell, then Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, then Sullivan, then Teo Fabi, then Mario Andretti, and then this battle between Brian Till and Robbie Gordon.
It's awfully early in the race. We're still, remember, it's hot today. All the drivers realize, Paul, that they're going to get tired. At the end of the day, they're going to sweat every lap. The sun is beating right down on them, besides the temperature being hot. So it's going to be a long day for all of them.
Here's our running order after the conclusion of 25 laps as we run down through the field and keep an eye on this fight. Gordon closes in just a bit. He now has other traffic ahead of him to aid him in his fight with Brian Till.
I just can't help but notice how much smoother Robbie Gordon looks in this particular race than he normally does. He normally looks like a rookie that's really chasing stars. Right now, he's very, very smooth. In fact, going through the bumps and all, he's one of the smoothest cars, and he's come from a long ways back where he's up in the top 10 already.
Oh, but Robbie Gordon has had some spectacular moments in this season. And if you want to think about the bumps, Bobby, his background is all off-road racing. Maybe he doesn't even know they're there.
He probably doesn't, Paul.
Fight continues. Nothing changes at the top of the order. We'll watch it here.
The shocks and the springs, just imagine how important they must be at a track like this, where the bumps are just so bad, where the cars just jump up and down. Shocks and springs are like tuning the violin. That's where it all happens here.
Shock absorbers, in fact, have become so much more important in IndyCar racing the last couple of years, where they used to have maybe a gearbox specialist and an engine guy and a chassis guy. Now you've got all the different experts, including a shock absorber engineer.
Well, they certainly do. Most of them are tire locked up going in there. Most of them have dynamometers for the shock absorbers, Paul, and all the shock absorbers and all of these cars are no longer hydraulic. They're gas on top of hydraulic, so they never aerate inside. Or in other words, whenever they finish the race, they're the same as when they started.
The leader of the race, Paul Tracy, is on the pit road. This is lap number 30. You would guess this might be a little early, but Jack Arute, I think they're being conservative.
They are, Paul. Originally, their plan was to pit on lap 31, so they haven't played it too close to the vest. They've just decided not to chance it. A nominal stop. They're just going to take on fuel, and that, as you always say, is what takes the most time here because they've completed the rest of the work. Has a little bit of trouble getting it back into gear, but in 14 seconds, he's off and away.
A well-disciplined stop, though. As you can see, the Penske team also began to lay out for Emerson Fittipaldi.
And again, if it looked like he wasn't hurrying when he was coming into the pits, it's because CART today has a speed limit.
Wow.
And they tell you that you can't go over a certain speed, and he's hit a penalty quite a bit this year, so Paul Tracy's not going to screw up. Come in slow, suffer your penalty and going slow, but go like heck when you hit the racetrack.
Maybe the camera made that look a little closer than it was, but it looks like he was awful close to Lyn St. James as he came out and rejoined the fight. Here comes Nigel Mansell as he's on the pit road, and you can see here just a little curve, and then it's a straight shot into their pits, totally avoiding the chicane. Now, Mansell in the Newman Haas pits all the way down at the far end, and Gary Gerould waits for him.
We wait with the crew, Paul. We're told that they'll make changes in both the front and back of the car. They want more downforce. They'll go for a larger wicker bill on the rear wing. They're making that change, and they can do that very quickly. They'll also make a slight adjustment as one of the last things they do at the front. Tires changes being complete. Fueling process there. Now we see Tom Wirtz make the change on the front wing. Waiting to come off the jacks. Mansell is gone. 16.4 seconds.
Boy, that's incredible to watch, though. They make the changes in the front, new wicker bill in the back. Jack Arute.
And Emerson Fittipaldi has just completed his pit stop, and Paul, interestingly enough, they made no changes. So obviously what we heard earlier in the report is exactly what's occurring. He's waiting, and he'll strike later.
And the car must be working fairly well because it's keeping him up to the front of the order. He stopped along with the leader on lap 31, the leader at that time being Nigel Mansell. As now the rest of the teams all beginning to make their stops.
Now, just so everybody knows what Nigel wanted right there in the middle of our screen, the number 5 car during his pit stop, he wanted more aerodynamic downforce. He wanted the wind to push his car into the track harder. So they put a bigger wicker bill on the back of the wing, which makes the wing work harder, and they put a full turn in the front wings. Now, his front wings consist of 3 different wings comprising his front wing, a real new leading edge on it, a middle one, and a back. They adjusted the backup on the wing.
And Bobby, of course, the sacrifice there is in top speed. It'll cut his top speed by a little bit.
Yes, Sam, but if he gets through the turns faster, remember, he'll go down the straightaways faster. So, in fact, right now, his top speed will increase instead of decrease because he'll use more throttle to come off the turns faster.
So as the leaders make their stops, Paul Tracy regains the lead. The first set of stops made between lap 30 and lap 32. So fuel not an issue at the moment as we continue with the run in Cleveland. Back in Cleveland, the Grand Prix presented by Goodyear. Paul Tracy still the leader, Nigel Mansell second. With the stops being run, Robbie Gordon ran up to third there for a bit. We'll keep an eye on the rest of the field. Some of the cars taking their stops just a little bit further.
Paul, this is very much the look of IndyCar racing this year. Paul Tracy leading the race. We've watched this more than anything else. Coming into this race, he led 314 laps to Emerson Fittipaldi's 141, more than twice as many.
Well, look at Paul Tracy. He pitched the back end through that one bumpy segment. 2 stop-and-go penalties have been assessed by the officials. One to Stefan Johansson because of speed limit violation in the pits. The same to Danny Sullivan. That's not making the officials popular with the drivers, but then again, I don't guess that's their job.
Well, it never is. It never works out that way. Sometimes the officials are right. Right now, it would appear when they come in the pits, they're going awfully slow. And 80 miles an hour to an Indy car that runs 230 miles an hour is pretty slow. And they have brakes, Paul, that stop them faster than you can imagine. So I would think that the 80 mile an hour speed limit seems quite slow to the driver. That's not even a fast first gear speed.
Well, Paul Tracy, the leader of the race, and with the stops, he pulled out 11 seconds over second place Nigel Mansell. Back at Portland 2 weeks ago, he took third place. Does he enter this race thinking more in terms of winning than in terms of finishing?
Well, right now I'm thinking more in terms of finishing because I want to try to pull up in the points. My goal right now is different from my goal at the start of the year. Now I'm 7th in the points, and I'd like to try to pull up into the top 3. And the only way I'm going to do that is finishing the races. And right now, leading into the race in Toronto, my hometown, I'd like to try to get out of here with a good finish in the top 3, and then I'd like to really put an effort in and try to win in Toronto.
Well, his effort today is spectacular. Leading the rest of the field, jumping out well in front, the team giving him a good placement on his pit stop, and Paul Tracy leads Mansell now by about 11 seconds. Fittipaldi in third. Teo Fabi moved up to 4th with the pit stops. Mario Andretti is 5th. Robbie Gordon is now 6th after he came up to 3rd, made his pit stop, and then dropped back. Danny Sullivan is 7th. And now Al Unser Jr. runs in 8th. There's the 50 car slowing on the track. That, of course, is Christian Danner, who is driving for Antonio Ferrari in Euro Motorsports.
The interesting question, of course, will the changes Mansell made to his car help him to counterattack Paul Tracy? Right now, Mansell, if the race were to end, Mansell would still lead the championship, 104 points. Emerson Fittipaldi would be 2nd with 86, Boesel 3rd, Mario 4th, and Tracy 5th with 62. So he is starting to help himself and become at least a shadowy figure in the championship.
You look at Mario Andretti is battling with Robbie Gordon now. It is a fight for 5th place. They're side by side at this point and threading their way through traffic. Robbie Gordon trying to push Mario as fast and hard as he can. Now Gordon moves to the inside, but then Mario on the entry to the corner gets a little better entry and gets past Gordon, but Gordon is still right there. Danny Sullivan, by the way, also in this fight, runs 1 car back. You're on board with Danny.
Well, that's a good battle right there. You watch it. Mario just drove it in there a little bit deeper. Gordon didn't know how far he would drive it, but Mario's in the bad position. Paulie's on the outside, and he just didn't let off the gas for a while.
And remember, Sullivan is mad right now. He was penalized. He came in. He at least shook his fist at the officials while he was being held there, so he's driving with real vigor.
I don't think Danny understood the length that they are making the stop and goes here because, as was explained earlier, the fact that you could actually get a stop here and gain an advantage because of the entrance into the pits. Mario Andretti holding off the youth of Robbie Gordon in the heat here at Cleveland.
And the other car in the mix there, Kevin Kogan in the blue and white car. Kogan having his troubles. Of course, he was injured at Indianapolis a couple of years ago. He came back with his drive at Portland last week, but he's still not 100% fit.
Yeah, this is only his second drive back on a road course since his injuries at Indianapolis. He is running back in 15th place and wisely moves aside, lets Danny Sullivan come to the inside along with the rest of the battle. Front of the field remains the same. Tracy leading Mansell by 11 seconds. Fittipaldi runs in third. This battle continues, the only fight on the course, as Al Unser Jr. now tries to close in on it as well, but he's closing in for a lapping position. Nearly the halfway point here in the run at Cleveland. We'll be back. Back at the Cleveland Grand Prix presented by Goodyear as we watch a battle in the family, the Gallus team. Unser Jr. as they battle for 6th place. Robbie Gordon's not there, and this is why. Matter of fact, he got the back end loose on one point coming off the first turn, and then just a few corners later was off in the grass, and that took him out of the battle.
Ken did a good job, though. He put the clutch in, kept the engine running. Now that shows that a driver is thinking while he's going through some bad times. Another nice thing is this track, being as nice as it is, as wide, just think he went off there without having a wreck ball.
Boy, talk about different lines into the corner. And Al Unser Jr. took the line to the inside, gave the line away. Danny Sullivan totally gave the line away by trying to move to the outside, but both of them apparently thought it was a maneuver that would work.
And just remember Detroit just a few weeks ago. It was these two men who battled for the lead right at the end.
They touch again.
I can't believe it.
These are the things that Rick Gallus always is upset about, is when his two cars get together. Now, in this particular case, these two drivers have been going hot and heavy, really the hardest battle most of the day, and they're the team cars.
Matter of fact, the past couple of weeks, apparently not a whole lot of communication between Little Al and Danny. They supposedly got talking again this last week. Not so sure this is going to help.
Now, it was Danny that hit Little Al in that particular case, but notice that Little Al was able to get his clutch in and keep the engine running. Danny right there, of course, lost his engine or killed his engine, and that really cost the guy a lot right there.
How do you call that one, Bobby?
Well, there's Little Al heading for the turn, and Danny wasn't far enough up underneath him, so it would have to be Danny's fault. He just didn't have what I call enough bite on Little Al to have let him go by yet.
So the yellow flags fly in this section of the course. Danny Sullivan stays with the car. We can take a look at this in slow motion. Let's look again. Danny Sullivan, you say not up, tight enough, and Little Al just slams the door on him, takes away the right front nose one.
On the other hand,
he didn't really slam the door, Sam and Paul, but what happened, the camera angle showed that Danny was ahead, but if you looked at an overhead shot, you'd see a Little Al was ahead. Danny was trying a pass, but he wasn't far enough up on Little Al. Little Al just took a normal line into the turn.
Bobby, on the other hand, a very wide track, of course. Two teammates battling like that, you think it would have been appropriate, let's put it that way, for Little Al to leave some room. As it is, the risk was both cars out of the race.
Sam, you can't leave any room. The guys can go out as wide as they want in the turns, but you have to go all the way down. If you notice, every one of the cars always goes to the grass. They have to hit the apex, or they're just not going to go fast.
But Al Unser Jr. was able to keep it going and continues in the fight. Here's Danny's view of the same thing, Bobby.
Now here's Danny coming out. Little Al's on the right, and you can see Danny is nowhere near. Right there's an overhead shot. He was only had his front tire up with Little Al's rear tire in that shot. Now, that isn't far enough to make a pass.
This can only exacerbate the tension on that team because there's just no question about this. It's a very tough call here.
Take a look at the replay again.
Here comes Sullivan on the left. Now watch out, he keeps the clutch in and does not stall the engine, gets it in gear and drives away. He's in 7th place currently after that contretemps.
And ironically, Sam and Paul, that's one of the best jobs that he's done today, is not knowing that he's going to be hit from behind and being able to get the clutch in. I don't like to sit and brag about my nephew, but that's the best job he's done all day, in my opinion.
Let me hear that again. You don't like to sit and brag about your nephew. That one in the record books. Paul Tracy is the leader. 10 seconds back now is Nigel Mansell. Fittipaldi is still third. Teo Fabi runs in fourth. Mario Andretti is fifth. Then Raul Boesel And then with the battle that we've just been witnessing, Al Unser Jr. now runs in 7th, followed by Stefan Johansson, Brian Till, and Robbie Gordon.
And that cone that the people see on TV, it's laying out in the middle of the racetrack, is rubber. It will be picked up at the soonest time they have a yellow down there, but it would be no harm to the cars in most cases if somebody were to hit it.
Actually been laying out there quite a few laps.
The drivers are going around it, but it doesn't make a lot of difference if they hit it.
Boy, what a terrific overhead shot. It shows the width of the runway. You see here they're on the eastern end of the track now, turning back, turning west with the city up at the top of the screen. You'll see it in just a moment, the city of Cleveland. There it is, downtown. Beautiful Cleveland, much improved over the city of 10, 15 years ago.
And they're certainly going down these runways faster than the airplanes land and take off, Sam.
Well, Learjet, takes off about 160 miles an hour. They're well above that speed. A matter of fact, those helicopter shots, the helicopter's got a pretty good clip going to it, Bell Jet Ranger, and it can't catch them.
We're starting to see something develop. You see Scott Goodyear there on the right, but as Paul Tracy moves by him, we're going to see Raul Boesel off to the right, just ahead, and this is a championship situation. There's
Al didn't come in after that spin, and apparently it's cost him as he limps back to the pits now, and the hope is that he'll make it back and not damage the car along the way.
Yeah, keep in mind, the bottom of that car is really dragging bottom. That isn't too good on it right there.
Again, we'll look back. Again, Danny Sullivan's in car. See if we can get it all the way into the corner this time.
You see that little Al was slowed there. That must have triggered Danny's decision to make a move. He just cut that tire with his right front wing.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, Sam. The right
But
front
also,
wing
Bobby, you see why Danny made the move, because little Al had made a mistake in the turn before. Danny'd been behind him for several laps, and in frustration, he chose that moment to make an attempt.
So Al Unser Jr. limps back into the pits, losing positions along the way after his confrontation with Danny Sullivan. Gary Gerould, are you there?
Indeed, Paul. A quick update on Scott Goodyear. Started 5th, was running in the top 10, had contact in traffic. This was the result, and the right rear had to make an extra pit stop back in 15th place, trying to work his way forward. Another frustrating day for the popular young Canadian. He's going to Toronto next week, hoping for better fortune.
Another thing, just so people know, Paul and Gary, is there are no tubes in these tires. They're tubeless. They're very thin. They have no more rubber on them than enough to just barely cover the treads that make up the tire, and that's all. They're very thin tires.
Well, an interesting race thus far. We're past the halfway point as Al Unser Jr. rolls for the pits. At the start of the race, a battle between Paul Tracy, the pole sitter, and Nigel Mansell, a multi-car accident on the start. That brought out the yellows, eliminated Roberto Guerrero and Bobby Rahal. Finally, Paul Tracy was able to overhaul Nigel Mansell and has led ever since. They've been through the first round of pit stops. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Tonight, spend an hour on one of the most unique modes of transportation in the world, the last African flying boat, an all-new special. Then, after America's Funniest Hour, Sylvester Stallone and Donald Sutherland star in Lock-Up, the Sunday night movie, all tonight on ABC. Right now, though, it's IndyCar racing, the Cleveland Grand Prix, presented by Goodyear. And Raul Boesel has flattened a tire. He was running in the front of this order up in 6th place.
Boesel, however, has very good news, which is that his car owner, Dick Simon, has done a contract with the car's sponsor for 3 years. The first multiple-year contract that Simon has ever had, and I think it speaks very well for the future of Raul Boesel, who, of course, runs second in the championship points now.
Without doubt, that's been one of the fastest teams all year. Boesel and Simon are making a good team.
Now remember, Danny Sullivan involved in that confrontation with Al Unser Jr. Let's go to Jack Arute for an update.
Well, Paul, this is the nose piece off of Danny Sullivan's car. Looks fine over here, but look over to the right. There's nothing left. Now remember, these cost about $14,000 a copy, so that was an expensive shunt with his teammate. Now, just moments ago, Ed Nathman, who calls the shots for Danny Sullivan, and his owner, and the man that calls the shots for Al Unser Jr., had words where I stand right now. Couldn't tell you what they said, but they weren't very happy campers.
Of course, that confrontation with that nose ended up cutting Al Unser Jr.'s left rear and sending him into the pits as well.
Well, you know, often you can see how tenseful it gets within teams. You're talking about, now this is Rick Gallus's team. You're talking about Ed Nathan working for Rick Gallus, but he's running Danny Sullivan. So you can see people can see that competition in teams are often just as serious as it is between other teams.
Maybe more bitter, really, because the first order of business is to beat the other guy on your team and then let the chips fall where they may overall.
The interval first to second as we continue with our look at the running order after 50 laps remains about the same, 10 to 11 seconds at the front of the field between the leader Paul Tracy and second place Nigel Mansell, with Emerson Fittipaldi continuing his strategy of just waiting race. Boycel's tires smoking. Now you see why they wear the Nomex gloves when they change the tires. The surface so hot after he drug it across the race course, limping back into the pits. Boycel has completed more than 942 laps. That's more than any other driver this season. He continues to be wonderfully consistent. Paul Tracy pulls up on the back of Mario Andretti, trying to lap the fifth place car of Andretti.
Now, one of the things that might be worth noting right now, where pit stops always seem to make a difference on the races, all the cars that I can count right now are going to have to make one more pit stop, with the exception, again, of Al Jr. because of his flat tires. And in Boycel, he just made his. Because of the flat tires, they have come in and made their tire change and fuel at the same time, so they'll go on, so they'll naturally jump up in the standings towards the last, Paul.
Well, as you saw in the race summary, they are averaging about 124 miles an hour. Race record and fastest road race in IndyCar history, run here last year and won by Fittipaldi at 133 miles an hour. So with those early yellow laps, they're well behind that pace. Keeping an eye on Paul Tracy, no battle at the front of the field. You know, some people significant to the development of this race here in Cleveland are with Gary Gerould. We can talk with some of them now.
Well, Paul, down here we have the opportunity to chat for a moment with Mark McCormick, the chairman of IMG International Management Group, that is promoting this event. And there was a danger, Mark, of this event leaving Cleveland. Your group, headquartered here, has stepped in and kind of saved the day, and it looks like everybody's really excited about the outcome.
Well, there's no way we could let this event leave Cleveland. It's a great city. It's one that we started in and we're really proud of, and we're delighted to be able to contribute in some small way to such a great community.
And the mayor, Michael White, also alongside, and I know it has to be exciting for you and your administration to make sure that this race stays alive in Cleveland by the lake.
Well, Gary, it is exciting. As you can see, there are thousands of people here. This will tell the Cleveland story all over the world. We think it's a great story, and we're glad to be doing this with IMG.
Well, we're all happy to be here. Paul?
Of course, Mark McCormick, once named the most powerful man in sports by Sports Illustrated magazine. IndyCar is certainly happy to have him involved in their sport. Paul Tracy continues to run unchallenged. Will it be victory number 2, his first scored on Long Beach? He's been running very smooth and unchallenged by anyone the last few laps.
You figure Paul Tracy has really been on trial ever since he was picked up by the Penske organization a couple of years ago. And earlier this year, mistake after mistake, taken out of the lead twice when he made ill-advised moves in traffic. We began to wonder if he had a future with Penske. And even today, rumors of all kinds circulate. Tracy out to be replaced by any number of other drivers. But it's this kind of performance which Paul Tracy is quite capable of, pulling away easily and defeating everyone, Nigel Mansell, the reigning world champion, included. And it makes you very tempted to keep your hands on a man who can do this kind of thing for you. He's having a beautiful race.
Jack Arute, more on Paul Tracy.
Well, Sam Posey, as an addendum to that, uncharacteristically, Roger Penske has not been on the radio that often with his driver, Paul Tracy. He's really let Tracy have his head today, at least what he is saying into Tracy's ears.
Well, Jack, it's always a question of, is a guy a learner? And for a while there, the idea was that Paul Tracy wasn't really learning very fast. He was continuing to make mistakes. All of a sudden, we see a real reversal of that. Paul Tracy seems to be learning, really getting his act together. If he does manage to avoid mistakes in his driving, well, he's one of the best men out here, maybe the best.
So at the front of the field is Paul Tracy, then Nigel, and then Emerson Fittipaldi, and in 4th place is Teo Fabi, driving for Jim Hall. Fabi, who has been struggling with the car, there he is. He's been struggling getting this machine up to full speed. Of course, Bobby, we're talking a team that doesn't test quite as often as many of the others.
Well, they don't, Paul, but by the same token, I think they've been recognizing that. And the owner of this team is, of course, none other than Jim Hall, the guy that's famous for the Chaparral car many years ago, where testing and development were an integral part of the sport. Now, for some reason or another, they don't test. And probably money is the reason they don't test. But Jim is recognizing that. He's hiring now engineers to help him do the thinking because he's an engineer himself. The car is definitely going better. Dale Fabbie is quite a good race driver. So it's all starting to show up because they're at least working harder on it. I think they just need to do what you said, test a little bit more.
Of course, you mentioned testing is expensive. For the past couple of years, there have been a number of conversations about how to reduce the testing so that it doesn't cost the teams as much. Is there any successful way to do that you can see, Bobby?
Well, there isn't. The only successful way is to change the rules. Now, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been contemplating forcing a rule change in the kart because they just need to get everything costing cheaper. An engine package is roughly $1.5 million a year. We talk about parts costing a cover for the engine $25,000. Just continue on, and you've got a car that's costing $300,000, and it's too much. They don't look any better to the people. They just need to make them cheaper so guys like this can afford to do more development work in testing.
Everybody, of course, if you're a car owner, looks at NASCAR and says, hey, look at how competitive that is, and it's much cheaper. But I still feel that part of the heart and soul of IndyCar racing is its technology and the development, and I would hate to see it throttle back too much in that way. Don't you agree, Bobby?
Well, I think so, Sam, but it could come back an awful lot of way before it make any difference.
Correct. There is the relationship between the leader, Paul Tracy, and Nigel Mansell, who pursues him well back. Now, you wonder, is Mansell suffering? Here he comes here. Is Mansell suffering from problems shifting the car? He is not as aggressive as he was earlier. See Bosell there briefly in the center of the screen. And Mansell currently 15 seconds back, not attacking at all.
Considerable distance back to the red number 5. 14 seconds now between Paul Tracy and Nigel Mansell. Again, you have to ask yourself about the injured right wrist. You also have to agree that this is a driver, as Paul Tracy heads down for the pits, this should be routine. But you're talking to Nigel Mansell, a very savvy guy who knows how to run these races despite the fact he's never driven here. Jack Arute waits for Paul Tracy.
And the Penske operation waits for his arrival. As he comes, he hits the marks precisely, and the crew goes to work. Jerry Briand down the right rear. They're just going to change all 4 tires, and they will take the fuel. They have, again, made no changes on this car. Tracy looks at his crew chief, and in 14.91 seconds, he is off and away. And, Paul, what should be his final stop of the day?
Tim bumps the crew chief on that car. Almost a casual walk away from the car. What a well-orchestrated pit stop. No hurry up at all in it.
In tennis, they have a term for that. It's called a cash. That was just a cash of a pit stop. But, of course, it was just perfect, too.
What will we do without you, Sam? Bobby, you've got that term now. It's on your log, right?
I hope you don't force me to remember it, but I'll try my best, Paul.
So with the leader, Paul Tracy, making his stop, it gives the lead over to this car, number 5. But, of course, he's the leader on the race course. He should be stopping shortly himself. We'll keep an eye on Nigel Mansell. Again, this team has been brave on their pit stops. Occasionally, they'll carry him a bit further. But, of course, Nigel Mansell is on the pit road. Stefan Johansson is also on the pit road as well. A long pit lane to negotiate for Nigel Mansell, and he's doing it slowly and carefully, being very conscious of that pit speed. Gary Gerould waits for him.
We look for the nose of the car. Now it's in sight. He glides in. Remember, this whole business of numerous pit stops in a race, something new this year for this reigning Formula One world champion. A brief respite now for that ailing right wrist. They don't expect any changes. He's not made any word on the radio about any discomfort with this wrist. They've finished the refueling. He's down and away. 15 seconds. Let's go to Jack Arute.
A little bit longer stop for Emerson Fittipaldi, but the reason, Paul Page, was they wanted to make absolutely certain that they took a full tank of fuel. They did. He's away.
And Fittipaldi got out behind Mansell. Still haven't cleared that cone off the course, Bobby.
No, there's been no yellows, and you notice that nobody's hit it either.
So with the front of the order, well, somebody hit it to get it out there, Bobby. The front of the order changes as they go through the second and what should be the final pit stop of the day at Cleveland. Looking at the edge of Lake Erie down on the Burke Lakefront Airport, Goodyear is not only on the track with its Eagle Racing tires, but also over the track with the Goodyear Blimp Spirit. The Goodyear Blimp makes its home base near Akron, Ohio, and gives us an aerial view today of the competition in the Cleveland Grand Prix presented by Goodyear. So Paul Tracy is back in the lead here. The pit stops, the second round has been complete. and Paul Tracy has led the most laps and will pick up the extra point awarded for leading the most laps in a given race. Nigel Mansell is second. Emerson Fittipaldi is third, followed by Mario Andretti. Fifth is Robbie Gordon. Stefan Johansson is sixth. Seventh is Brian Till. Scott Brayton is eighth. In ninth is Teo Fabi, and Mark Smith rounds out the top 10 in 10th position. About Teo Fabi, Gary Gerould.
Well, Paul, before the pit stop, he was running in 4th place. They came in, they stalled the engine. It was a 25-second stop. That extra critical 10 to 12 seconds has cost him 5 spots in the racetrack. He's now 9th.
Looking back in the field now, Mark Smith in his rookie season here in the IndyCars, running in 10th spot. He's been higher than that. He was up in 7th prior to his pit stop. Good team, Arciero Racing. Team that has always promoted new rookie drivers into the sport, and this guy is really paying off for him.
Well, that kid has really come a long ways this year. He really is starting to look good as a driver. The team, Frank Arciero's team, hasn't looked this good since probably back in the days that I drove for him, Paul.
When Mark Smith first went to Indianapolis with his dad just when he was a kid, he met Rick Mears in the lobby of the hotel. That was the first IndyCar driver he ever met. Talk about starting at the top. And of course, if Smith ever makes it into the Indianapolis field, he will be the first person with that name ever to race at Indy. There's so many Joneses.
Been saving that fact ever since the Indy 500.
Well, I couldn't use it at the 500 because he didn't make the race this year, although he almost did, and I am fully confident he will next year.
One very competent driver. In fact, at Long Beach, I went back. They have a trailer where they can all do their physical therapy and their exercise work, and he was back in there icing down a leg. He felt terrible. He'd been out go-karting and involved himself in an accident. He was, boy, am I dumb here. I got an IndyCar ride, and I'm screwing around on a go-kart. Emerson Fittipaldi chasing Nigel Mansell. This is a battle now, developing for second place. Paul Tracy is 22 seconds ahead.
I think what happened at Portland last week is critical to our understanding of what's happening here. Emerson Fittipaldi was able to snooker Nigel Mansell into trying to break too late, and Fittipaldi went on to really defeat Mansell, and I think that meant a lot to Fittipaldi. After all, they're both world champions. Fittipaldi has an awful lot of pride. To have Mansell come onto his turf IndyCar racing and be leading the championship does not go down that well with Emerson Fittipaldi.
And of course, exactly what we started the program today with, the fact that these two former world champions have been head-to-head in many cases this season.
Now, Emo's working up pretty hard. He's like on the prowl right now. You can watch Emo. If you know his personality, if you know his driving techniques and his talents, you can see he's really got his eyes set on that car right in front of him, and he's going to be attempting a pass not too far from now.
Update on Nigel Mansell's situation, Gary.
Well, there's another problem for the man now who has the bad wrist, who's got to battle the bumps and the heat. We understand their gearbox problems now, and that's been one of the primary concerns of every team because of the roughness. They think that's why he may be losing ground to Emerson Fittipaldi.
In fact, some teams take it so seriously here that they put brand new gears in the gearbox before the start of a race here.
Yes, in fact, the poor teams, the guys, look at Emo working on, he's really working on Mansell really hard right now. But a lot of these secondary teams, the teams that don't have money, buy these used gears from the leading teams like Penske will slide in new gears. Mansell's car, that's Carl Haas's team. Brand new stuff in the transmission for a race like this especially. The other guys benefit from it because they get gears that probably only run one race.
Haas's team, of course, the Newman Haas team has this fantastic reliability record. Their mechanics as good as anybody in the business. They very rarely break down either his car or Mario's. And so if there's a mechanical problem, it would be very, very unusual. Now, Mansell, you think of how on earth, with so little experience, remember, it was just one day, just yesterday, for practice and qualifying. He had never seen this track. He was competitive for the pole right from the beginning, his third or fourth lap. Fittipaldi has been here forever, has won the race 3 times, tremendous experience, difference, and yet they race at the same speed.
So Mansell and Fittipaldi continue their fight. And Mansell is extraordinary. When you go out and watch him, you say, well, he's running fast. That's what he should do. But you consider he's at his first course every time he makes a circuit in the IndyCars this year. And this battle, of course, is going to continue next week as they head across the border. The world's drivers here in the IndyCars, some of the greatest in the world, will head north to Canada for the next stop in the PPG IndyCar World Series, the Molson Indy Toronto. And we'll have coverage next Sunday right here on ABC. Fight continues for second place. Not even a glimpse of Paul Tracy well ahead. You can tell the humidity accompanying the heat here as the rear wings. Here's Scott Goodyear in and out of the pits. Keep an eye on those rear. Now, this is not an in and out. This is a we're done for the day. He takes the steering wheel off. No indication as to what this problem might be.
But when they unplug that steering, whoa!
Quick off and on, but it's Mario. He got it on, and he gets locked up with his teammate. Look at Fittipaldi slips to the outside. And Nigel and Fittipaldi close together once again. But Mario almost a key factor in that one.
And that's exactly where we saw Mario have problems earlier. The same turn in and around where that cone is lying in the middle of the track.
Now, here comes Fittipaldi challenging inside of Nigel Mansell. They come through the corner side by side. Two great champions in their continuing fight. Boy, look at that run.
That's the best piece of driving we've seen all day long. Went through those turns side by side. You can see Mansell out there just raising up all the dust. He couldn't have had any traction. Emo didn't think he'd make it, but he did. Mansell is quite a driver.
What kind of trust are we talking about between these two guys to be able to do that?
Well, there's a lot of trust. These two guys are, of course, two of the finest in the entire world, and they just trust each other. But the fact is, it still shouldn't have made it, Paul.
It's interesting that there was more leeway given between these two men who are on different teams, the two great rival teams in this series, and rivals for the championship as well, than the trust we saw between Little Al and Danny Sullivan, who drive ostensibly for the same team earlier.
So for the moment, after the quick challenge, the battle breaks off as they encounter slower traffic here on the edge of Lake Erie. The fight continues at Cleveland with Paul Tracy in front. Back in Cleveland, Paul Tracy is still the leader. The battle continues for second place between Emerson Fittipaldi and Nigel Mansell. Paul Tracy is a full 28 seconds out in front. But these two, Fittipaldi and Mansell, have really been at one another. They have constantly been going back and forth. They found a very good place. You saw it once over in the East Loop where they can get alongside one another, and they have both used it very effectively.
Yes, only this time Emo kind of said, hey, I'm going to get you a little harder this time and go completely by, because Mansell couldn't get back even with him, Paul.
So Fittipaldi now sits in second place. Nigel Mansell back to third. Stefan Johansson sits in fourth. Of course, they're dealing with some slower traffic. Olivier Briard right there, and he moves offline and lets Nigel Mansell resume his battle with Fittipaldi. Of course, there was that spectacular moment when Mario Andretti got off course, did a little half spin. Mansell and Fittipaldi split him and came around, and that put them back head to head. We can take a look at that situation again right now while these two continue to trace one another. Now keep an eye. Here they were heading down toward the East Loop. Now look at Fittipaldi. He moves inside. Mansell decides I'll stay outside. But unlike the last time they tried it, Fittipaldi sweeps right in there.
Boy, he just stayed on it a lot harder. He got a bigger bite on him going into the turn, and he just got a lot more speed during the turn. So Mansell couldn't stay up alongside, but Mansell tried the same thing again that he did the last time.
So Fittipaldi into second place with his number 4 car. Paul Tracy is out in front, 28 seconds ahead. And running now on 75 laps, so we are 10 laps from the finish of this run. Nearly 2.4 miles around, so it will take at least a little while to get there. Paul Tracy won an ARS race here in 1990. He went wire to wire at that time and set a record when he did so. And he could today win an extra $100,000 if he wins this race due to the Marlboro pole bonus for being the pole sitter and running to the checkered flag.
Now that the Penske cars are running 1-2, it makes you wonder, would Roger Penske prefer to have Emerson Fittipaldi win this race rather than Paul Tracy?
22 car is the Amway car. He runs right now back in the field in 12th place. You got a shot there of Robbie Gordon, and Al Unser Jr. in trouble. Little Al's pulled to a stop off the edge of the course. Nothing obvious on the car. Looks like Little Al just shut it down, Bobby.
Well, we can't see anything wrong. We don't see anything knocked off. All the tires and wheels seem to be on the car, and as far as we can see, all the wings are on the car. Looks like it's all in one piece, so it's a little hard to say right now. It looks like a mechanical failure of some sort.
IndyCar safety team members are right there with him. Gary Gerald, can you update us on this?
Well, indeed we can, Paul. We just got a quick word with Rick Gallis, who said somewhat forlornly on the wall, it is a blown engine. And so the day is over now for Junior.
Al Unser Jr., who's had his ups and downs today and fell back to 13th before he pulled the car aside.
And just so everybody
Here
knows,
comes Mansell again as he charges with Fittipaldi, and Mansell gets past Fittipaldi. This battle for second is not going to quit. Now look at Fittipaldi. He cuts inside that cone, looks for a little straighter line onto the lakeside straight, and tries to get alongside Mansell. It's a right-hander ahead. He can't get him there, but he can set up perfectly for their run through the East Loop.
now that was obvious that Emmo didn't see that coming. Mansell snuck up on him. Not that that should be allowed. Emmo's too professional, but he did not see that coming. And there was some lap cars involved. So Mansell, being the smart guy that he is, saw the lap cars ahead. He went for it. There's Scott Braden with obviously a blown engine right there. Remember, we said that this race is going to take tolls. It's hot. It's going to take tolls a lot of things. So there's 2 engines already blown, Paul.
And right here in the closing laps, now sitting just ahead of the battle for second place is the 11 car. That is Kevin Kogan in the Conseco car. But the 2 cars battling for second place are right there and now mixing in traffic. Looked like Kogan came off the edge of the course as the leaders came past, or a second place battle came past. And Fittipaldi now puts his nose ahead, and he can't hold on to it. Kevin Kogan got back into the fight fairly quickly, though. Here's again, Fittipaldi moves, and Mansell comes to the outside. Now Mansell diving unconventional line into the corner. He gets Fittipaldi, but take a look at Fittipaldi. He moves back outside.
Boy, you don't see these guys race any harder than that. They're really...
This is terrific. Look at this side by side. Whoa! 2 world champions battling it out here in Cleveland. Fantastic.
That's the best you see right there, Sam. That's good racing.
Fight continues, second place. Fittipaldi in second now. Mansell chasing. Down the pit straight, heading for the first turn once again.
Boy, if there's anything, look at that. Here comes Mansell again, and he passed him again. Now, if there's anything wrong with Mansell's right wrist, tell me where it shows up.
Well, 7 laps to go. There's no reason to hold back in any respect.
They're
This is a battle.
each other 2 and 3 times a lap, Sam.
And it's a serious battle as far as the points championship is concerned. Mansell wanting to extend his lead over Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi very eager to cut it down.
So Mansell and Fittipaldi battle for second, as Paul Tracy runs at the front in the closing laps of this race. We'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC stations. Back at the Grand Prix of Cleveland, presented by Goodyear. The battle continues for second place, though. While we've been away, they've stayed just like this. At front of the field, it is Paul Tracy looking for win number 2, while Nigel Mansell and Emerson Fittipaldi battle it out for second place.
Well, you can see how far sideways Mansell got. There's Emmo right there. Mansell's right behind him. Came out that last turn. Mansell got sideways. So he's still trying hard. He doesn't want Emmo to get the second. He wants it.
So at the front of the field is Tracy, and then the battle between Fittipaldi and Mansell and Stefan Johansson. Part of the fight toward the front of the field as well.
Johansson finally having a great day, a day that extends past the first pit stop, where they typically had so many problems before. I talked to a crew member on that team, the Bettenhausen team. You see Johansson coming out now in the center of the screen. He said this could be our day, and this guy was right.
Johansson running in 4th place. Next time by the start-finish line, it will be 2 laps to go for Paul Tracy. If the Penske team can win here in Cleveland, it will mark the 75th win for Roger Penske as a car owner. Consider some of the areas that Penske already leads in. He will lead in wins if he gets there. Mark Smith, blown engine. Kart safety team, IndyCar safety team is right there. Penske leads most poles with 98, most 500-mile race wins, 19. Most PPG Cup championships, 8. Most IndyCar wins, 75 if he can get to the end of the day. Most Indianapolis 500 poles, 10. And most Indy 500 wins, 9. What a record for Penske Racing. And now Paul Tracy, part of the new breed, is trying to add to it. The yellow comes out at the start-finish line. Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, we knew that Roger Penske couldn't resist. He has picked up the banter very considerably with Paul Tracy. The last 10 laps, he has talked nonstop to Paul, just saying nice and easy, be smooth. You got to remember, he cannot forget what happened to Paul Tracy in Phoenix.
Which is, of course, an accident right near the end of the race when Paul Tracy had a commanding 2-lap lead over the opposition.
It's funny sometimes, though, when drivers get under job jeopardy, how they seem to straighten their act out. Paul Tracy today has truly looked professional, in my opinion.
Paul Tracy smooth and unimposed at this moment, going to the conclusion of this run here at Cleveland. The battle still on the course is for second place, though broken off for the moment, between Nigel Mansell and Emerson Fittipaldi, with Fittipaldi occupying second place at the moment. Now Paul Tracy takes a look at the white flag. One more lap to go for Tracy. Traffic ahead of him. We watch for that battle for second place as it is ready to stream under the flag as well, but Tracy has a commanding lead over the rest of the field.
This will tighten the points chase if it finishes this way, because of course Emerson Fittipaldi will close up on Nigel Mansell. Not terrifying him, not making him shake in his boots exactly, but closing up and making the season a good deal more interesting here at the halfway point.
Second win of the season, second win of the career for Paul Tracy. He finishes out this lap an extra $100,000 because he started on the pole and has carried it all the way to the checkered flag. No opposition for Tracy, and the battle for second place continues to be broken off for the moment. So it's Tracy, followed by Fittipaldi, followed by Mansell, and Stefan Johansson in fourth. Now Paul Tracy being so very careful. He makes the move into the last chicane. The final left. And Paul Tracy sees the twin checkered flags the second time in his career, and Paul Tracy has won here at Cleveland. Looking for that battle for second as it heads for the line as well. And no contest there. Emerson Fittipaldi runs all alone toward the line for second. We'll be back. On a very hot day in Cleveland, the Grand Prix has been run. Paul Tracy has scored the second win of his career. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Paul Tracy has made his way to victory lane, got the congratulations from his crew chief, Tim Bumps. He's taking off all the paraphernalia. Paul, it seems as if it takes longer and longer for a driver, especially one that has to get the congratulations of his wife as well. A win at Long Beach on a temporary road circuit, a win in Cleveland on an airport road circuit. Paul Tracy, congratulations. It looked pretty effortless today, was it?
Well, it wasn't real effortless. It was real hot today, and the competition was tough right from the word go with Nigel Mansell and Emerson, and it's a testament to the crew and the job they did, get me in and out of the pits quicker than everybody else, and that's how we were able to build up the lead.
What about your maturity through the year? Compare how you feel now as to when you captured your first victory in Long Beach.
Well, you know, it's a lot of time has gone by since then. I've had some disappointments, and I've had some, you know, good race back at Portland, and I knew coming into this race mid-season that we needed to get the season turned around and really start to, you know, make a charge towards the end of the year, and that's what we're trying to do.
You're going into Toronto now. You have always said that's important, but you go with $100,000 more than you would have.
Well, it's a nice bonus, a Marlboro Pole Award bonus, and I'm glad I'm the guy that won it. And it feels real good going into Toronto, my hometown. I'm really looking forward to going up there next week.
Well, congratulations. Let's check in with Gary Gerould. Gary?
Well, here's another Marlboro driver with a big smile. Second place today for Emerson Fittipaldi, the sweep for Team Penske. But the race that you and Nigel Mansell had for second in those last laps was as exciting for you as it was for us to watch.
Oh, it was incredible. You know, I lost a lot of ground mid-race, and then I was running stronger, and I was really pleased. I mean, Nigel did a clean job. I did a clean job. I think it was a fantastic race.
Former world champions battling out there. Now, Emerson, you gain a couple of points. You close it in a little bit more, and that puts a little more pressure on Nigel.
Well, I'm sure, you know, and I'm very happy my teammate, Paul Tracy, did a beautiful job for the Marlboro Team Penske. I'm very, very pleased.
Well, it should be a happy time indeed for Team Penske. Congratulations, Emo. Let's go back to Jack.
Well, we're taking a look at Nigel Mansell as he's getting the congratulations of Carl Haas, Paul Newman, Stan Barrett. Nigel, a very spirited run all afternoon.
Yeah. It was great. The team worked fantastic. I'm afraid I gave the car all I could give. I think everyone could see the Penske was using a little less road than what I was, and it was very tough out there. We had a real exciting fight for second place. I'm disappointed but happy at the same time. We got a great finish. All credit to the Newman Haas team and all the great sponsors we have.
What about the wrist? You heard it yesterday.
Yeah, it's killing me now, but I mean, what the heck? I mean, the race is over now, so I don't have to worry about it.
And lots of points for the championship.
Yeah, but I'd like to finish ahead of Mo. He's got a bit closer, but there's a long way to go yet, and it was a great race.
Paul?
Third place, Nigel Mansell. He only has a week to rest that wrist before he heads off to Toronto along with the rest of the IndyCar drivers. We'll have coverage there for you. And we'll be back with more from Cleveland. Back at Cleveland, the race has been run. We still have a chance to talk to some of the other drivers, and will do so. There are some controversies here. Next Saturday on ABC Sports, it will be the world's finest bowlers as they roll into Texas for the El Paso Open. Then ABC's Wide World of Sports features the Houdinis of the hard court. In a special encore performance, the Harlem Globetrotters visit South Central LA, plus all-star athletes roll into action in the Squirt Summer Skate from Universal Studios in Florida. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Well, Stefan Johansson is happy for a lot of reasons. He hasn't been able to finish many races today. You do it, you get some hard-earned points. How tough was it, and particularly with the wrist? You've just taken all of the tape off of that wrist today that you sprained yesterday.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. It was real painful, and I think it was the worst track on the whole calendar. We could have had a problem with the wrist because it's so bumpy and so much kickback in the steering in all the corners. And this double right-hander down there, I had to steer the car with the left hand virtually the whole race because I just weren't able to hold the steering with my right hand.
And, of course, now with very little opportunity to rest, you head for Toronto. We wish you well next week, Stefan.
Thank you very much.
Good job today. Let's go to Jack.
Well, we're watching the run here of Danny Sullivan all afternoon, and you got out of the car and you made a heated sprint down to the officials. What was that all about?
Well, my contention is, of course, I stopped, and they gave us a stop and go and said Stefan and I were both speeding. But the radar gun only picked up one speed, and mine was, how do you ascertain that I was going the same speed as Stefan just because I was behind him? And especially when there's a variation of 2 miles, they say we were doing 87, and there's an 85 mile an hour. That's 2 miles. That's a pretty good judgment call from a guy standing on the wall. I say to them, I want you to show me both speeds on the clock. You have to show me where the guy wrote down both speeds of 87, not where the guy ascertained that I was doing 87. And my contention is, what it does is, if we're speeding, fair enough, but it drops us back into the pack. We got a run going. You got a championship you're trying to score points for. And, you know, some officials just making a flippant call because he says, oh, 87, well, they look like they're both doing it.
Well, let's ask you about Al Unser Jr. very quickly, too. You were very upset with him.
Well, just, you know, Al said, you know, in Portland, if you move over on anybody, that's blocking. And he made a mistake coming out of a corner. I went past, tried to go past him. He moved over and chopped my nose off.
Some more words with this team, Paul.
Danny Sullivan angry and still looking for points. Here's the top 6 unofficial results at the moment, with Paul Tracy at the top of the order. Still unofficial, though the complaint by Danny Sullivan is not appearing to affect this part of the order, with Paul Tracy as the winner and $100,000 richer over the purse for running from the pole to the finish of the race as the winner. Penske cars 1 and 2 in their 75th victory. Nigel Mansell in 3rd, and the points fight still very tight.
Well, Mansell still leads in the points, but second in points now is Emerson Fittipaldi instead of Boesel. And the way the Penske chassis is working, I think that Fittipaldi poses a bigger threat overall to Mansell than Boesel did. So Boesel coming on, dropping back into 3rd in the points, and Fittipaldi coming on.
So now the halfway point in the season has been crossed. Round number 8 of the PPG IndyCar World Series has been run. In 1 week, it is on to Toronto, and then another 500 at the Michigan International Speedway. I'm Paul Page for Sam Posey, Bobby Unser, Jack Arute, and Gary Gerould. Thanks for being with us today, and we will see you next week in Toronto. Congratulations to Paul Tracy.